You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.
Today's episode is sponsored by Centre, and grab more about them later. Another interesting topic, loyalty and luxury. How can premium brands land a winning loyalty strategy? We're joined by somebody who has worked with quite a few premium brands. And I'm not talking about Paul, I'm talking about our guest today. Some of you already know him, some won't. So warm welcome to Ed Balls, the owner at Limesharp, who's worked with brands including Paul Smith and Nobody's Child. So, hey Ed, how are you doing?
Hi James, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm very good, thanks. Enjoying the manic peak season.
Yes, I know it's 3 days before Black Friday. We're obviously crazy, but hey, let's see who listens or versus who's crying in a bunker somewhere. But we've taught, like you've taught loads about loyalty. You've done webinars. Me and Paul talk about it a lot. There's lots of noise in the industry this year. It's almost as if a lot of people have woken up to the fact that loyalty is a good thing to do, which is strange. And you've just launched a loyalty as a service, so we thought this was a perfect time to kind of bundle all of our perspectives and do a session around what a winning loyalty strategy is. And how do you go beyond the basics? So before we get into that, do you want to give people who have not come across you and Limesharp a bit of flavour of who you are and what Limesharp is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really nice to be on this podcast and not talking about tech stacks and replatforms and migrations and something that I'm very passionate about in a minute, which is loyalty. So yeah, obviously you've done my intro already, James. My name's Ed and I'm the owner at Limesharp. So we are a full-service digital commerce agency. We've been in existence since 2006, so yeah, 18 years. I've been working at Limesharp for the last 15 years, which has been lots of fun. So typically we work with sort of luxury, premium, fashion, lifestyle brands across, I guess like three different sort of pillars of design, technology, and strategy. And that covers all of our kind of services that we work with brands on. Team of 40, agency in London and also in Auckland. Couldn't get further away from the UK. That's my business partner, chasing love the other side of the world. So yeah, that's a little bit about Limesharp.
Excellent. So let's start with a little bit of a kind of position piece. From you speak with a lot of brands and you build an out loyalty program and some as well. What does loyalty mean in the e-commerce space today? Because it's definitely evolved in the past few years.
Yeah, it's a constantly evolving space, and I think that's kind of come a little bit from lots of brands innovating quite heavily within loyalty. And I think that's been the main sort of driver for that change that we've seen. If you go back to some of the historical loyalty programs or what we would consider successful loyalty programs with Nectar and Boots and those very kind of traditional points-based systems, they kind of dominated over the last kind of 20, 30 years. But I think we're seeing, especially with brands and brands operating in more of a D2C mentality or space, a real shift in not just offering points, but a real variety of tiers, services, points, and also quite some quite abstract type programs, which is really interesting. I think everyone's standing up and taking note of what a loyalty program could do for them. We see lots of brands with programs that already exist that maybe haven't been touched, that they've just been sort of put and left to run. But we're seeing, that we're also seeing that big shift in people putting a lot more prominence on it and building it into their overall proposition as a brand rather than just as sort of like an little add-on.
Great. And then first question for me. So your client, similarly to ours, are kind of more premium luxury, as James has already said. How are they positioning loyalty, and how is loyalty being positioned in this space, or is it loyalty? How is the whole proposition being presented to customers?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a massive variety in the overall positioning. And I think that's driven by, I guess, like brands taking a step back and understanding what a loyalty program can actually do for them. So I think historically, we've always looked at it as just like a way to, increase your average lifetime spend for a customer at a very kind of granular level. But yeah, we're seeing it almost as people taking a real step back and saying, what are our core problems as a brand that we're struggling with? And how can we potentially use loyalty to solve those problems. Good example of that will be, how do we change buying behavior away from discounted promotions onto full price products? How do we increase the amount of people that are logged in on the site? And then we can do, previous order-based price merchandising for products, or how do we start charging for returns or delivery? And a lot of that is being built into the mechanics behind these loyalty programs. So I think people are, taking that step back and saying, how can we make loyalty work for us? And I think that's where we see that differentiation in the different types of programs.
Grebin create digital flagship stores for iconic brands of today and tomorrow. We are the #1 Sentra agency in the world, with more than 50 Sentra implementations to date. We are also e-commerce design specialists, platform and tech partner agnostic. Try our new e-commerce design subscription. Visit grebin.com.
One thing I was going to add to that as well, that's relevant to a couple of clients that we share between Limesharp and Vivon, is the competing with wholesale partners as well, where they're quite often cheaper. So like using loyalty a bit more for that, and like building additional benefits that they can't provide into it.
Yeah, because I mean, how often do you get a brand to come to you, Paul, and say, we're being basically commoditized against the people that we've sold to on the sort of multi-brand retailer space. Our additional services are X, Y, Z. How do we, create that? I guess that customers coming back to our site to buy from us rather than elsewhere. And I think, loyalty is a real kind of key driver for that. I guess you see exactly the same thought.
Yeah, and I've seen this working with brands who are really trying to expand D2C and have historically just had a very basic proposition. Well, you can buy direct from our official store. And it's like, but not many customers give a toss about buying from an official store. The ultimate brand loyalists will, and there's a bit of kudos of buying direct from it. Most people want convenience, they want price, and they want service. And if your delivery proposition, for example, is completely crap compared with leading retailers, you're going to struggle, especially when they're discounted heavily. So that leads me on to like a strategic lens on this, which is, and you start talking about this, Ed, about approaching this strategic, about what behavior you're trying to drive. Brands need to understand that, but they also need to understand what motivates their customers. How do you think brands need to approach? How do brands need to understand what drives customer behavior? Like what are the touch points where they need to overlay that insight, and how do they get it?
I guess they probably need to have a really good understanding of customer behavior from their own data. And I guess, Paul, that's probably something that you work quite heavily with brands on, especially on the paid side, is understanding, cost of acquisition for a new customer, and then how often they're coming back for repeat purchases. What's driving those purchases? Are they making their first purchase at full price and they come back for discount, vice versa? Are they getting to one purchase and then never returning again? All those types of things. So I think as a brand, you probably need to have a really good understanding of customer behavior through understanding data, customer feedback, speaking to people in store. I think that kind of research piece initially goes a really long way in, I guess, identifying what the objectives should be for your loyalty program.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And we'll come on to that again, I guess, when it comes to the measurement side of it. So my next question, so how do you balance rewards and profitability in a loyalty strategy? And how do you get finance teams, or in particular a CFO, on board with the idea of kind of investing in existing customers and potentially, taking a margin hit, through some of the benefits you're offering?
Yeah, I suppose all you really need to dangle in front of them is moving away from discounting across the site. All the CFOs seem to be interested in that, especially with profitability. I think lots of brands are actually doing some a really nice job of having some offering, like more ad hoc, that they're already doing and already delivering. So when we've been mapping out rewards for specific brands, like when you actually dig into it, they're actually probably doing 50 or 60% of those rewards outside of a loyalty program. They're just not advertising it or formalizing it. There might be rewarding if I spend customers in the store by giving them free gift with purchase or something, but that's maybe not advertised anywhere. So in terms of the profitability side, you could actually argue, maybe you're already doing 50 or 60% of those, and the loyalty program will be formalized based on that, and it's more like marketing activity. But I think from a cost perspective, you do really need to keep a very close eye on it. Obviously, it goes up with scale, but if you want to start offering 3 beers and champagne for X amount of customers in your stores, what's that on the bottom line, 56K for a year, whatever it might be. So like having a really good, and I think bringing in the CFO to those conversations early, having them feel involved in the project from the start, because we're going to be leaning on them to doing things like ROI calculators and cost analysis of the program, and at tier level as well. So like if you are doing tiers, you're going to break it down by, right, how much is the program costing for our people in our first tier versus our VIPs, and doing that type of analysis. And I think CFOs will actually love that type of analysis. So bringing them in, embracing them, they're our friends at the end of the day, they're paying for stuff, and getting them on board at an early stage, I'd say.
Centra is the only commerce platform built exclusively for fashion brands. Over 300 fashion brands run on Centra, including icons like Paul Smith, Jeff, Avenue, and Nudie Jeans. Centra solves business logic challenges for fashion brands like no other platform, and they are on a mission to help you scale up rapidly, globally, across all online and offline channels. Take your fashion brand global, faster, further, stronger today.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because sometimes the cost of loyalty program is hidden because it's absorbed into other cost lines and budgets, especially like freebies and giveaways, which might be in a marketing part versus your cost of sale from an e-com store through discounts and promotions. And yeah, it's you really need that level of transparency to understand loyalty as a whole and the impact as a whole. I've got a question related to that. Actually, we started this episode by talking about the fact it's Black Friday week where the whole world goes bonkers, and loyalty can't exist in a bubble outside of like peak trading, standard discount promo cycles, because it has impact. And there are considerations about how do you treat loyalty customers during peak. Do you ring fence them with specific deals that nobody else can get, and is that part of the perks? Well, I guess a question for both of you, because you work across lots of brands. Let's start with you, Ed. How do you see brands handling loyalty specifically during peak? Do they isolate it? Do they make it a core part of their peak campaigns?
I mean, yeah, sale is a key topic as part of any kind of loyalty program design. When we've done customer feedback, or customer surveys asking specifically what those loyal customers actually want, it's all early access to sale, or lots of it's early access to sale. Only be the first. So you can actually build that into your, if you are going down the tier, or you can build that into your tier structure, being like, right, we're going to give you early access sale. If you're in our first tier, maybe like 2 or 3 days before everyone else. If you're VIP, you might get that 2 weeks before anyone else. Also exploring the ideas of like always on sales for a specific tier. So, a hidden category that always sits on the site, or something that sits in your account. I think the bits you need to be really careful about is, especially if you have physical stores, is how do you replicate that in store? Like you get someone to come into the store and say, right, I heard, you've come down to the basement downstairs because we've got our always on sale for you. So I think, understanding what the in-store experience as well as online is quite key, in sort of mapping that out. So maybe this is just going to be the digital only type offering. But yeah, I think customers are generally most excited about how you're positioning sale. And Paul, I think from previous conversations with you, some of your brands are doing some interesting things around like discounting X% with if you're in a certain tier. So I don't know if you've got anything to add there.
Yes, I think so quite a lot of brands will issue a discount as you get to a certain tier, and that's like the main driver behind the like upgrading, or like the main like lever. And I think it varies as to how people use that through peak, but most would just honor that discount on the sale price. The other thing that I was going to say, I've seen quite a few brands, rather than maybe going all in on discount either straight away or at all, issuing like bonus loyalty points. So doing like treble points and stuff like that as like an additional mechanism that's a bit more premium. But beyond that, I think it's just making sure that your comms in the discount with the sale price, and then early access is the big one, like you say, Ed, across our clients.
And Paul, question for you again as well. So I think historically we've always felt that maybe points wasn't that sort of luxury or premium, but you mentioned using points as kind of key levers. Are you seeing that shift back towards a combination of tiers and points and services layered in? And what's your general impression on the market of how points are perceived by brands?
So I feel like I think the word loyalty, like almost like perceptions changed. I think 2 years ago, if you sat in a premium fashion brand with like a board or, a leadership team or even a management team, everyone would like turn their noses up against loyalty. And then there would be like some level of negative like connotation around points and everything else. Whereas now I think a lot more premium brands are adopting it because I think it's the easiest way. One, it's like one of the key levers to get people to make that additional purchase because they're upgrading. Two, it's very clear. I think it's more about, for me, the benefits. So rather than just being like flat discount led or store credit led or whatever, it's more about like services and things like that. So yeah, self-portrait I always use as an example of like a premium brand that essentially it's points and tiers just flat, but it's positioned really nicely. And then Hugo Boss is another one that's quite prominent at the minute. But yeah, I would say that perception's definitely changed, but that's more premium than luxury. And I think the big thing now that I feel like loyalty and VIP are kind of blending, whereas before they were seen as two completely different things with two completely different like stakeholders almost.
But the crazy thing is premium luxury brands have always done loyalty. They just don't call it that.
Yeah, that's true.
You have concierge services, which have been advertised for years. You're right. The blurring of the boundaries. It's the semantics that always make me laugh about. You have brands like, for example, Smyson, who have some really uber wealthy clients who get a really personalized service. They don't talk about it. It's not badged publicly. And I think that here's a misconception. Loyalty doesn't have to be publicly advertised. It can be a surprise and delight. You are now eligible and therefore we will deliver our loyalty service and you will know about it. But no, the website doesn't tell everyone else that you can earn it. It doesn't have to be a visible public. The whole point is you're trying to influence behavior, trying to encourage greater lifetime value and loyalty of shopping. Who gives a shit what you call it, right? But you need to be able to put tactics in place to reward people and incentivize them to continue being good shoppers.
I love and surprise and delight, James. That's come up quite a lot with some of the brands we work with. There's like one of the key kind of objectives or trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's nice. I've got a couple of brands who do it, and they look to pet care brand I'm working at the moment. They're a premium pet care brand. They're not like a luxury fashion, but they're premium. They're high end products, and they've got like a more affluent audience. And they do plenty of this, where it's things that are added to the order that appear in the parcel when the customer gets it.
Yeah.
They don't know it's coming, because if you tell somebody it's coming, they just be like, oh, that wasn't as exciting when I unboxed it. So there's lots of things that people are doing in this space in terms of loyalty. They just haven't previously talked. You're right, haven't talked about it internally as loyalty. It used to be that dirty word in premium.
Yeah, I completely agree. Membership's the other one, like VIP, private client, membership, loyalty. It's all kind of merged a bit now, which I think has been driven. Yeah, carry on.
I was going to say, events is a classic one, and I've worked with like all membership organisations where they have public events and people can sign up, and depending on your membership, you might get like either discounted price and you might have 3, but then they've got their VIPs who have access to additional events which aren't publicised to the wider membership, but they see that when they log into their account. That's personalised on the website, where you log in and then it's like hey, we got a VIP event coming up. I'm not a VIP. I wouldn't ever see that on the website anywhere because the content isn't triggered because of my ID. So there's lots of these things where people are being rewarded. It's funny though how that people haven't necessarily tracked that in the past so effectively in terms of what impact that then has on the behaviour of those people.
Yeah, I agree. So next question. So we talked a little bit about kind of, some of the benefits around purchase frequency and, having the tiers. So people kind of wanting to purchase to move up the tiers. And we talked about those kind of finance stakeholders who need to sign off on the margin hit and everything else. To what KPIs and metrics do you think ecom brands should be looking to track when launching a loyalty program?
Yeah, a little hat tip actually to Yotpo. I don't know if you've come across their loyalty guide for CFOs. They've created a really nice piece of content which is all based around some of those key metrics as part of a loyalty program that you should be tracking or your CFO should be looking at. So definitely hunt that out. You can get the link from Google, or James, I'm sure you can put something in the podcast. But that is a really good article, just like highlighting all those points. I think again, I was speaking to Yotbo about this recently, and I think they're looking at creating some sort of loyalty KPI, like how conversion rate works, because there's so many different metrics at play that it's so difficult and confusing to understand, like how much success our loyalty programs are actually driving compared to what we were doing before, or maybe not having one at all. So maybe some sort of like combined data entry, like a conversion rate that's really simple and easy to understand of like how successful that is. But I guess if you go back to your objectives of what you're trying to achieve, I guess it's like overall customer lifetime value. So that should be probably the number one thing that you're tracking. And then some complementary metrics around adoption rates for your customers. Again, like it depends on your consent models as well. So some brands will be signing everybody up to their loyalty program if they ticked into marketing, whereas some brands are actually saying, right, join our loyalty program that's separate to our newsletter. So adoption rates can be a little bit blurred. And then I think like things like the amount of customers that are logging in on the site is a really kind of critical one. I guess that's driving that sort of first party data conversation. And yeah, have I missed any data points there?
I think the only thing I was going to say is one of the values of tiers, and particularly if you're using one of the vendors which is quite tier orientated, is that you can measure the speed of like movement between the tiers and like the growth of tiers. So you can kind of model it that way. But that and purchase frequency was going to be my main ones. Then I think it goes down more towards like CRM and like how people respond to like the campaigns around loyalty.
I was just thinking the growth of tiers sounds like a great band name. The one that I really like as well is if you've got a referral program, is what impact does the loyalty have on people's propensity to refer, and do they become more valuable referrers because they refer good quality people in? Because obviously the two are linked. Yeah, you refer people, you should get additional loyalty rewards. And then I don't know if you said it, sorry, because my Wi-Fi went a bit funny for about 5 seconds. It must be your voice triggering it. But the time cycle between orders as well. Do you, because I know like lifetime value is great. Are people buying more? Are they buying more often? Are they speeding up?
Yeah, no, 100%. And if you are going down that points route, and I think that's probably a separate debate of making sure customers understand how to spend them. But also, I guess, tracking that spend from customers, like how many points have you assigned that haven't been spent? Is there expired points? Like getting some reporting and measurement on that. Also from a liability perspective, probably makes a bit of sense. I think, we just listed off probably like 10 different KPIs or metrics. So I think it is a really kind of confusing space, and going back to those original objectives of what we're trying to achieve and maybe breaking down by them with some complementary stats in there.
Yeah, no, I really like that point that you've raised, Paul, about the movement between tiers, because I did some work with the merchandising team at a big catalog company a few years back at JD Brown, and they actually had a really good program in terms of, it was annual and it was based on spending on the spend level you had, you moved up the tiers, and the rewards got really good in like birthday gifts, surprise and delights, all these additional benefits. But bizarrely at the time, they didn't have any like events, listen out for when people were not up to the spend for that year and were going to drop down a tier, to then send out comms to encourage people to do it. And you find out actually that a lot of the time, the reason people get stuck or drop down is just because somebody hasn't reminded them or hasn't given them an incentive to, you're £50 off staying in the gold tier, which gives you, £500 worth of benefits, and you've got 6 weeks to go. Why not spend £50? And you get all those benefits again.
Yeah, those tier movements is quite interesting. We have that debate quite a lot with some of the brands that we work with, just on should you be demoted basically from a tier if you haven't been spending. But to go back to your point there, James, like if you've set up some of those automations around, right, this person joined in December, we know they haven't spent by November next year, maybe we need to get in contact. Maybe that might be a good opportunity to send them a text or give them a call. We've got our autumn winter collection dropping, or spring summer, whatever it might be. It adds an additional layer in to actually warrant a conversation with the customer. And Paul, I think we were chatting the other day, one of your brands is like, I think 50% of their marketing content now is all on their loyalty program. Even using that as a bit of an objective of, right, how do we speak to our customer more that's relative to them, and like having that baked into a loyalty program. I think 50% is insane.
Yeah. The other thing that just reminded me of, a story that I've told you before, Ed, was when I went to the Klaviyo thing in Boston and watching James White, who had just gone from gold to silver with BA, nearly spend an absolute fortune upgrading his flight to get back into the gold status. So, and it was a very interesting thing to watch from like a psychology perspective. And it definitely made me think a little bit more around kind of how that could be used in loyalty program.
But I think at the premium luxury level, I mean, any level, you should look to help your customers and reward them, not punish them. And there are sometimes genuine life event reasons why people have stopped purchasing and might be missing out on rewards. Maybe they've had a family bereavement, or if somebody's been ill. That ability to detect and understand when people have been good loyalty customers for like 3-4 years and suddenly they've dropped is maybe it's time to, as you said, find out what's going on, because you don't want to punish them and then that really pisses them off and you lose them in your customer. You want to be a little bit flexible in understanding, and maybe sometimes it's about, okay, we're not going to demote you. You're a good customer, but you do have 6 crap months.
I'm not talking about calling and someone that's made one order and ask them why they haven't purchased again. That's probably a little bit too needy. So I think maybe on those upper tiers, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So next question. And we talked a little bit about this in the past, Ed. What role can gamification and community play in a loyalty program?
I think community has kind of been a key driving for a lot of like outdoor and activewear brands, very well publicized and advertised. It works kind of perfectly for them, whether it's running clubs, cycling, those types of community-driven loyalty programs, and they seem to be very popular at the moment. Gamification is a really interesting one and something that we're quite excited about with the program that we've got launching next year. I guess it's giving the customer certain tasks to do and then rewarding them specifically. Immediately when you start talking about gamification, you start thinking about, computer games and that type of activity. But, if you flip on its head and look at it more on the sort of brand level, really good example would be someone like Patagonia. Their whole business model and operating model is based around sort of sustainability. And their loyalty program is based around gamifying sustainability purchasing. So like if you buy X product, or if you bring this product down to a store to be repaired, you'll get certain points or rewards. So gamification can actually work really well across the spectrum of brands, not just for more kind of like niche type businesses.
And I think it's kind of rewarding other things beyond transactions as well. Like there's room to get people engaging with your brand a lot more, particularly physical retail. I was going to call out Bandit as well, Bandit Running, because I think that's an amazing loyalty program and they've gone super broad with it, and it's positioned really nicely. But they've got the game on the website, which I doubt has any massive commercial benefit. It's pretty cool, I think, and it's super engaging. But essentially, you can, if you get a high score on the game, it then issues loyalty points, which is a literal example of gamifications. Yeah, but it's pretty cool. James, I'll let you ask the next question.
I was going to say, I remember seeing a gamification approach a few years back, which I thought was quite smart, and it was it was a newish brand, and it was linked into getting rewards, and it was trying to get people to better like browse and go across the site. So they did like a treasure hunt on the side, and there was a limited number of special items, golden eggs, whatever it was, hidden around the site, and you had to hunt to find them, and you got rewarded for finding it, but you got rewarded for the speed of doing it as well. And the aim is twofold: was to give people rewards, make it a bit of fun, but also increase product discovery and people's understanding of what the brand is and what it sells, which was quite nice.
Yeah, and as soon as you say treasure hunt in a with a luxury and premium brand, they're going to go like, "What? Who are these people?"
Yeah.
But actually, on the flip side, if you look at so Burberry have created a new like flagship store in Shenzhen in China, where the whole store is their central loyalty program. So you have to do certain actions within the store to earn social currency. So like you'll go and interact with the QR code, do a social share or a product, whatever it might be. And within the actual store itself, you then unlock certain products or areas within the store. And also they've got this like cafe in there where you have to like unlock certain menu items. You have to have done certain tasks. So that like treasure hunt concept, James, like you'd say, well, no luxury or premium brands will be doing that, but Burberry are doing that exact same thing to engage with Gen Z.
Well, the other example, my favorite loyalty program is Kif, and like there's so many products that are only available to people in that top tier, and it's slightly different. But yeah, I think that's a really nice example as well of like, yeah, kind of building a lot more scarcity around things and kind of using that to drive people to want to move up as well.
Yeah, sorry, Ed, you go.
No, I was going to say, if you actually track back that the Burberry specific program and what we were talking about before of setting the objectives, they've all probably thought about it internally and gone, our current loyalty program is really good at rewarding our like older VIP customers. How can we design something that's really going to engage a different target audience? What are they really into? And I guess like grow up the next generation of Burberry fans, and that's. I don't know. It seems really cool. Very interesting.
Again, this comes back to understanding consumer motivators and behaviours. If you understand what motivates and how people behave, you can incentivize accordingly. I find it fascinating because I am the complete antithesis of the target customer of these brands. Because if someone says you need to spend more to access more products, I'm like, sort of, but that's because I'm completely the wrong profile of audience. And I find it fascinating to see how it works. Especially the exclusivity thing of like limited drops and exclusive items, which you have to have been in a certain tier of customer in order to be able to get. Because though at the high-end brand level, an exclusive item or one that's a very small product run becomes something of value and holds its value, and it's a collector's item.
Absolutely. Members only products is quite hard to do properly though, because like you need to like segment some of your collection, not like it needs to be exclusive to the brand, so you can't sell it to wholesalers or retailers. Like if you come across a members only product and then it's like listed on John Lewis, whatever, the next day, you can be pretty pleased. And then also, how do you actually replicate that in store? Do you have like that secret cupboard downstairs with members only products? But yeah, no, I think we're seeing a lot of brands doing that to varying levels of success.
Yeah, and I think when you tie this up to other bits of the modern technology chain of things like digital proof of purchase, like blockchain based stuff, you've got all this ability to actually give people something of value beyond just being able to purchase a product as well. Proof of ownership, certifications, etc. Let's move on, because a question that has to be asked is, and we'll start with you, Ed, is what are the common mistakes you see or have seen brands make when managing loyalty? Because it is challenging and it's hard to get it completely right. What are some of the gotchas people should need to look out for?
I would say like launching a program, going to all the effort of launching a program and then just leaving it to run for 12, 24 months and not doing anything with it. Like we see that a lot, whack up a landing page with, discount on your birthday and just kind of expecting it to do wonders for the brand and the revenue. So I'd definitely say, once the program's launched, are you optimizing it? Are you looking at those key metrics of, moving people between the tiers, understanding how the points mechanics are working? I would say taking away rewards. So like restructuring your program quite frequently can be very detrimental. So let's say you launch a loyalty program, you've made a real kind of marketing push around some of those key rewards, and then all of a sudden you go, hang on a second, that's not profitable for us because we need to spend X to keep it up. And then all of a sudden have taken that away, that could really upset and damage overall kind of appearances for the brand and customer. And then I think the other thing just internally is around ownership of the program. So typically we see loyalty sitting within a CRM or marketing team, but actually it really heavily involves everyone through from retail store managers, CFOs we've talked quite heavily on, marketing team, digital teams, and it really needs to be part of that brand offering and not just a plug-in or an add-on. It needs to be that kind of continuity with all your communication. And I suppose they're the kind of three pitfalls that we've seen.
The only one thing I was going to add to that is making sure there's actually value in the tiers, because I have seen loads of loyalty programs where people, there just isn't enough value and just doesn't result in triggering reactions. Next question. So I know you've been doing a few evaluations recently. Which vendors are you seeing most in the loyalty space, and which ones have impressed you the most?
Yeah, we've just done a huge project basically analysing 4 different vendors as part of the selection process. I think in the Shopify space, I think Yotpo's awesome. And they've got a really great team there. Really knowledgeable around loyalty as well, because I was quite impressed with the fact that they don't just do loyalty, but the internal knowledge that they have around loyalty programs was really strong. They have like dedicated people within there. If you think they've got reviews, UGC, email, SMS, like they've got so many different products. So I was actually really impressed with the the level of expertise they have in-house, and from a product side is great. I think looking at Ontavo, we've been really, really impressed as a standalone loyalty software that doesn't do anything else. So complete opposite from a Yotpo. I guess more on the enterprise space, it's all API first. They have really kind of tight integrations with Klaviyo, with Salesforce Commerce Cloud. The Salesforce email, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, tight email and CRM integrations, and they're just focusing on their product. In terms of the loyalty specific features, they probably have the biggest amount that they've built themselves. So whereas a Yotpo will partner with a Novell for their digital wallets, Ontavo have got all that kind of baked in. They've also got UGC elements, they've got NFTs in there, they've got point fitting. So I think from a loyalty only product, their offering is really strong. We've been working quite closely with Viardo as well. So I guess quite a different offering to Yotpo and Ontavo in that you need to use their email CRM product. But I think that kind of makes a lot of sense, because a loyalty program is essentially segmentation, events driven through CRM activity. So it kind of makes sense to have that baked in. So yeah, they're the 3 main ones that we've seen or come across and been impressed by on different levels. James, Paul, anything from you guys I've missed?
There's one that I've seen quite a bit in the Shopify space recently called Revo. So they do the accounts piece quite nicely as well after a status stopped or terminated their service. So I think they've won a lot of business as a result of being able to take those customers, and then they've got that loyalty solution as well. So it's in them quite a bit recently. Any you'd add, James?
I think it really it depends on how sophisticated you are versus if you just want basic. So I think there's other vendors out there who have just simple points, but don't have the wider feature set. I really like Yotpo, I'd say, because they also can work on a B2B, but it depends on how complex your B2B setup gets. And that's probably out of my knowledge zone, to be honest, the really advanced B2B ones. I've not had a selection for somebody is like a manufacturing, for example.
Solutions as well, aren't there? That maybe in Ecom, we're maybe a little bit blinkered in terms of the vendors that only support, your Ecom platform. But yeah, there's a lot of point-owned solutions, is it Amex Cloud or Annex Cloud or something?
Annex,
yeah. Purely.
They used to be quite big in the Magento space, didn't they? Years ago. I remember them at Imagine in Vegas. Yeah, I haven't heard that for ages, Annex Cloud.
Well, you've got people like Recharge, the subscription specialists, who have got their retain product, which is about encouraging loyalty and subscribing customers. So depending on what your need is and which audience it is, you can sometimes find these that somebody else has a core set of features you could use, and maybe you don't initially need to launch with a specialist loyalty partner. Maybe that's a phase 2. I'm a big fan of launch light and simple, POC it, get it working. I know when you're at high-end brand level, that doesn't generally work. It's launch with all the bells and whistles and make it the prettiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, without ruining the next question, I think it'll be interesting to see kind of which other vendors go into loyalty, because anyone that's got access to customer data, I think there's a room for them to play in the space for sure. But that takes me on to the final question. So how do you see loyalty evolving in the next kind of 3 to 5 years? I realize it's very hard to see anything in 5 years with everything that's going on, but maybe 3 years.
Well, we've got to the end of the podcast and we haven't really no one's mentioned AI at all. But interestingly, I think something we might see is like hyper-personalisation based on what's really important for me within that rewards. So personalised rewards based on like what makes me tick. I think that could be quite an interesting play. I definitely think the gamification is going to really evolve quite heavily over the next few years. And I think, James, to go back to your point you were making before around, creating those exclusive assets as part of the kind of, I guess, like the sort of branding there, whatever you want to call it, as part of your loyalty programs will become pretty big. I don't know anything from you guys?
I think data will probably be more readily available, and I think AI will support that. I think segmentation and personalization will be native in more ecom platforms. I think that will support what you were just saying as well. And I think maybe there'll be more use of blockchain technologies. So for like the Omni piece, I think that might be a bit easier. And I also think there'll be consolidation in like the OMS space and bits of the back office, which will probably make it a bit easier for like really complex brands. But beyond that, I think it'll be the same principles. It'll just be a bit easier to roll it out.
And if you're looking at, I guess, like overall brand trends over the last 10 years around influencers and celebrities and endorsements, we're seeing a lot of brands leveraging those partnerships with people to create really nice experiences and rewards for their customers. So whether it's like really kind of behind the scenes or bidding points for certain activity with these like influencers and celebs, invites to shows, like VIP access to stuff, I think that's definitely going to be pushed forward in the next couple of years.
I think there's room for those two areas to merge a bit. So Lululemon have a loyalty program specifically for like PTs and like influencers in the fitness space. And then they get quite a big discount. And then there's like gamification around it. And I just pitched that to a client, actually, a similar idea. I feel like, influencers generally, I think there's a few areas that can probably merge into that. That's a really good point.
This is like the conversation that could go on and on, isn't it? Loyalty is such a big, but it's a really interesting area as well. And there are so many examples of brands doing things like uniformly versus those doing things a little bit different. And the tech is constantly evolving. So let's pause there before we turn it into a 16-hour long episode. But hopefully everyone listening's enjoyed it as much as we have. Lots of stuff we talked about, lots of practical advice. Anything you agree with, disagree with, do let us know. If you want to find out more about what Ed and the team at Limesharp are up to with their loyalty as a service, please do reach out. The link's on the landing page, or just hit up Ed Bull on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us, Ed.
No, thanks, Amy. I've really enjoyed the conversation. As you said, we could be going for another 2-3 hours.
Indeed, or days, because all three of us can ramble on inanely. But thanks again, everyone, for listening, and do join us next week for the next episode.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.